Apple loops sound great, but some artists and composers find it limiting to only use loops from the Logic library. In this movie, we'll learn how to make any regular audio file into an Apple loop that's searchable in Logic's loop browser. So here's a project we've been working on. We're going to add a sound from the browser menu on the right. Let me open it up, and notice it's defaulting to the Groove Bin folder where we have some sounds. I want to just check out this dope beat 2-bar. So I'm going to click on it and click the speaker button to audition. So that might be a nice beat to add to our song. Let's try to add it. I'm going to just take it from here, and I'm going to drag it in, position 1, 1, 1, 1, the beginning of our song. Logic makes a new track for it named after the region, and I can see this is a stereo region. It's got a double circle, but comparing that to the single loop of the upright funk bass, we can already tell there's something a little different here. Let's hear what it sounds like with the song. Whoa, kind of sounds like a train wreck, right? Something's different about this dope beat 2-bar, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that the difference is that this is not an Apple loop. So files that aren't Apple loops don't automatically conform to your project's tempo. So our project's tempo right now, as you can see up here in the LCD, is 100 BPM. So obviously this dope beat 2-bar beat is not at 100 BPM, and we really don't have any indication by looking at it what the tempo is. But there are some very easy ways to figure out what the tempo of an unknown tempo region is. Let me show you one of those ways. So with the region selected, we can go up to Edit, Tempo, Detect Tempo of Selected Region. This is a really awesome feature that lets Logic just look at a region and it'll actually tell you what the tempo is. So let's do that. And it's telling us that the resulting tempo of this region is 89.8747 BPM. So we can actually round that up to 90 and just decide that this is a 90 BPM 2-bar loop. Of course, since our project is set at 100 BPM, that's why it didn't work. So we now know this dope beat 2-bar is 90 BPM. But I want to make it conform into our project. I also like the sound of this region, and I want to create an Apple loop out of it. Well, you can actually do that from within Logic. You can create an Apple loop and have it join one of the thousands of Apple loops that you have access to in any song. So here's how we do that. With the region still selected, go up to File, Export, and we say Region to Loop Library. And notice when I do this, I get a pop-up window, and I want to make this a loop, but notice the loop button is grayed out. So why is that happening? Well, it turns out to make a region into a loop, it has to fit within a perfect bar amount in your song. And because this region exists a little bit over the bar, since it's not the right tempo of our project, the Apple Loops creator won't allow us to make a loop out of it. So how do we fix that? Well, the easiest way is, now that we know the region is at 90 BPM, we can just make our project 90 BPM just temporarily. And notice, as soon as I made our project 90 BPM, it looked like the region shrunk, but really what happened is the background grid of Logic now is at the right size. So this region is actually an exact 2 bars when we're at 90 BPM, and you can see it fits right in there into the 2-bar grid. Now that the region is the exact length of 2 bars, I can go back up to File, I can go back to Export, and I can say Region to Loop Library, and now the loop button is active, and I can turn it into a loop. That's a really useful thing to know. It stumped me for a while when I was trying to make loops, and it wouldn't let me. The key is you have to be at the right tempo, and your region has to be fitting perfectly within 1 bar, 2 bars, or 4 bars, or whatever it is. So now that we can choose loop, let's make some descriptors. Again, these will help us search for it later. So we can even choose a genre. Let's say this is, how about urban, and this is a drum part. So we're going to say put it all drums, and we'll call it beats. And we can even give it these descriptors. So if we wanted to, we could say this is a part, and we can say it's not acoustic really, so I'm going to uncheck that. Also, it is grooving, so we'll choose that. And we'll click Create. Logic does its thing. It's taking a second here, and it's done. It still hasn't converted the region we have out here into an Apple loop, but it did add it to our loops library. So let's go ahead and delete the track. Hit delete twice, it'll delete both the region and the track it's on. And now let's hit O on our keyboard to open up the loops library. And let's take a look. We're going to type in the name of it. The quickest way to find it is because we already know the name is dope beat 2 bar, and as soon as I started typing that in, there it is. So now it actually showed up with the rest of our Apple loops. And let's listen to it. And it does say tempo 90, but remember, we wanted to bring it into our project that was 100 BPM. So I'm going to return our project back to its native 100 BPM status. And if I drag this in, now that it's an Apple loop, it should be able to conform. And notice, instead of the double circles, it has now, in the icon of the region, it has a double loop-to-loop, which is an indication that it's an Apple loop. It also seamlessly fit into our 100 BPM grid. And the true test in the end is just to hear it in the end of the song with all the other instruments and make sure it works. Cool, it works. So that's how you can add any audio file to the Apple Loops library. It's as simple as going into File, Export, Region to Loop Library, but remember there's those other steps involved to make a loop. It has to fit within the grid, and then you give it the descriptors, you export it, and it will be now part of our Apple Loops library that we can use in any Logic project from here on out.